Good morning. You're listening to York's Morning News on WSBA. I'm Jim Horn.
I'm Gary Sutton. WSBA News Time is 8:38. We're going to be joined in a few moments by Congressman Darrell Issa. He's a representative from the 49th Congressional District in California. He's also the ranking member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He is the ranking member, which means he's not the head of the committee, but he's the ranking Republican member on that committee. He has written a letter to the White House about the Joe Sestak job offer. You remember Congressman Sestak was on last week on our show on Friday, made some news, I guess, nationally as well. And we continue to ask him about the fact that did you get offered a job by the White House to get out of the race early against Senator Arlen Specter and running for his seat? And the answer was yes. The problem is there's no answer beyond that. In the meantime, what's really interesting is, in the latest polls, Congressman Sestak has moved to within 11 of Arlen Specter. He was down by 24 prior to that, and the last poll was taken a month ago. He has also moved within 5 of Pat Toomey. He was down by somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 before that. So who knows the reason why, but could the reason be why? That he has said the White House has got maybe some graft and corruption going on? Yesterday, what is very interesting, the question was asked again to Robert Gibbs, who is the press secretary at the White House. I'm assuming by Major Garrett and Jake Tapper. And this is the answer he got when he asked about, have you got any news for us on who in the White House came out and offered this job to Congressman Sestak? And the answer he gave, quote, was this: I've talked to several people in the White House. I've talked to people that have talked to others in the White House. He really said this. I'm told that whatever conversations have been had are not problematic. Congressman Sestak has discussed that this is, whatever happened, is in the past, and he's focused on his primary election. That Gibbs acknowledged some conversations have been had, problematic or not, could further fuel U.S. Representative Darrell Issa from California, who last week sent a letter to the White House General Counsel Robert Bauer seeking some answers about the allegation. So the White House is apparently deciding what's problematic or not. With us this morning is Darrell Issa, who is the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. And good morning, Congressman Issa. Great to have you on York's Morning News.
Good morning. The amazing thing is that we finally found out what one-way glass is defined as. It's what they have in the White House. It's transparent depending upon who's in the White House and who's out. Clearly, that's one of the problems we're facing here on Capitol Hill.
Congressman Issa, you have been vociferous in going after the White House on this issue. You've also written a letter to the White House listing a series of questions that you wanted answered by, I believe, tomorrow. How's that going so far?
Well, it appears as though they're going to stonewall this whole question of who talked rather than we didn't say, did anyone do something that was known to be inappropriate in your opinion? That was the one question we left off. Very clearly, people made offers. Maybe it was more innuendo and suggestion, but that's for a fair answer by maybe the public and certainly by those who have transparency requirements on Capitol Hill. It's obvious they're going to stonewall us at least through the primary, and that's one of the problems we're having with this administration is they determine what transparency is, just as they're determining what a vote is up or down on health care.
Well, there's an arrogance there that's pretty incredible to us, and we've heard this before, I think, back to Nixonian times, with this kind of stonewalling, when he says, I've talked to several people in the White House, I've talked to people that have talked to others in the White House, and I'm told that whatever conversations have been had are not problematic. So, in other words, we've decided that it's okay, nothing really bad happened, so just go away. I feel like, we're trying to knock on the door of the Wizard of Oz. Disregard that guy behind the curtain.
Well, absolutely. This might be better characterized as no controlling legal authority. The question of finding yourself not guilty without even answering the question of what did you do, in fairness, Congressman Sestak deserves to be vindicated in that he either said the right thing, that, yes, I was made an offer. If that offer doesn't cross the line, fine. But here you have a member of Congress running for the other body, and he's 20 points down in the polls, mostly because he told the truth, at least as he viewed it, of circumstances that the White House won't confirm or deny. they'll just say it wasn't problematic. Now, that's almost worse than the stonewalling they did up until yesterday.
What's amazing, though, is that Congressman Sestak, in the most recent polling coming out yesterday, he had been down by 24, actually down 53 to 32. He has now closed that gap to somewhere in the neighborhood of around 11 points with Arlen Specter, and he's closed the gap with Pat Toomey from like 49 to 38. Now he's closed it down to 42 to 37. So apparently, and who knows why, but the fact that he made this accusation, even though he hasn't gone any further, I'm wondering if that's the reason that he's closed the gap.
Well, from initially, it appears as though it hurt, not helped him. And although, many people don't wear badges that show their partisan nature, by definition, we do in Congress. I would love to have Toomey win the Senate race. That, no question at all, it'd be good for my party. So the amazing thing is, it would be just as easy to ignore this if it wasn't our job to ask and get answered questions, as has been going on for years. Are the emails being kept properly? Are the meetings being transparent according to law? Law that both Republicans and Democrats voted for, laws that both Republican and Democrat presidents signed. The amazing thing is, some of the very things that President Obama's administrations were refusing to disclose are things that Senator Obama championed and demanded when he was here in Congress.
Yeah, Congressman, it seems as though the White House is trying to deem that there's no controlling legal authority here. But what I wanted to ask you was, this investigation has taken on sort of a life of its own, thanks to your pushing on this. But if Congressman Sestak had come out and said something to Larry King when this first broke, to the effect of, well, I wouldn't call it a job offer necessarily. There was a toe in the water. Maybe there was a feeling out process, sort of try to determine if I might possibly be interested. There's obviously some legal liability potentially at the White House here. If the congressman would have answered the question in that way rather than just saying yes, would this all be an academic exercise right now?
It would be, absolutely. The fact is, part of what makes it wrong or not wrong is not just what somebody offers, but how it would be reasonably taken by the recipient. And that's one of the reasons that we sent the letter. We don't know exactly what was said or by whom. What we know is that the recipient of the offer thought that he, in fact, was receiving a valid offer of a federal job in return for getting out of an elected race. And that is very, very specifically illegal.
Yeah, in fact, if you go to the 18 U.S. Code, Section 600, very specifically says in there to prosecute corrupt public officials who use, quote, government-funded jobs or programs to advance a partisan political agenda. This federal statute makes it unlawful for anyone to, quote, unquote, directly or indirectly promise any employment, position, compensation, contract, appointment, or other benefit to any person as a consideration, favor, or reward for any political activity or for the support or opposition to any candidate or any political party. And then it has this, in connection with any primary election, unquote. I mean, I don't know how it could be any clearer than that.
It couldn't be any clearer, which is one of the reasons that someone saying that it wasn't problematic means that they had to ask somebody. That person had to characterize it in a way that they said, off the record, not under oath, not in any way, shape, or form verifiable, that, I talked to him, but I didn't offer him that. Well, I've been in politics long enough, and both elected official and a party supporter, that I've seen the kind of maneuvering that goes on between parties and elected officials to try to clear primaries, to try to save money, if you will, from the primary to the general, which, by the way, is okay as long as you're not offering the taxpayers' dollars for it. So I know how brutal and absolute that can be. We'll support you in a future race if you don't do this. But if you do this, and you lose, you're history. I've had that said to me when I ran for the U.S. Senate initially, and I wasn't history, but I didn't win. So those kinds of do this or else, very, very common. And it's okay for party bosses, it's okay for the Chicago operation to do those things, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actually the patronage system of, I'll give you a federal job or I'll give you something else of value in return for not running for office. And the distortion on democracy there is huge.
And I think the American people right now are tired of having this dishonesty and this arrogance stuck in their face for the moment. Two questions for you, Congressman. Number one, what kind of support are you getting from fellow congressmen and congresswomen right now on this? And number two, assuming that you don't get an answer tomorrow to your, I believe, 7 questions that you had, is there a next step for you? Do you start to get a little bit more serious about going after this?
Well, our leader, John Boehner, 3 years ago said, we're no longer in the legislating business, we're in the communicating business. In my case, my committee, I'm in the investigating and communicating business. So the truth is, what you're doing, making people aware, creating a situation in which your listeners have to decide between what they're saying and what we're reporting, that's really mostly all we can do. We're certainly going to continue to ask for investigations, but unless there's a public uprising, if you will, it appears as though the Democratic majority cannot be forced to comply with their own rules and so on. And certainly Eric Holder has not shown any willingness to go after corruption in this administration.
If people wanted to put pressure on people to get that done, where would they go? Who would they write to? Who would they call?
Well, certainly in Pennsylvania, you have the most powerful stick, because not only can you appeal to the Senate, but members can appeal, citizens can appeal directly to their members of Congress, Republican or Democrat, and make them aware of just how unacceptable, particularly for Democrats, it is to not know whether or not their candidates have been tainted by promises or any kind of a payoff. And, Arlen Specter is a deeply flawed senator. I've served with him. I've worked with him. But he also deserves to be vindicated if he had nothing to do with this effort to clear the primary. And so I think for Pennsylvanians, whether you're an Arlen Specter or a Joe Sestak or maybe a Pat Toomey, you deserve just an honest answer so that when you start looking at the candidates, you're looking at them with the information as to whether they're perfectly clear of wrongdoing as you try to decide who your next senator will be.
Openness and transparency have become two haunting words now in the Capitol, and we would hope that we could just get some open and transparent answers. So far, it seems like people are just twisting the winds like Robert Gibbs, and we hope to hear something that will vindicate everybody concerned. Congressman, great having you on our show this morning. We appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you again soon, sir, and thank you for what you're doing.
Have me back.
You take care.